At Morixa Tales, we believe in the power of storytelling. Our scripts weave together deep emotions and dramatic turns to deliver justice where it is most needed. Experience captivating mysteries where the truth eventually shines through, leaving a lasting impact on your heart and mind.
For a year, I had been secretly helping my husband's former driver, the man my husband fired, without explanation, without severance, without mercy. One night, he stopped me outside a grocery store and whispered, "Don't get in that car tomorrow. Take the bus heading south. This is a matter of survival. You'll understand when you see who's on it." I thought he was crazy, but the next morning I lied to my husband, and I got on the bus. What I saw in seat 14B destroyed my marriage and saved my life. Hi everyone and welcome. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Drop a comment below telling us where you're tuning in from. We love hearing from our community. Just a quick reminder, while this story is inspired by real-life experiences, some details have been fictionalized for storytelling and educational purposes. Any resemblance to actual people or places is purely coincidental, but the truth behind it, that's real. For exactly 1 year, I had been slipping $60 into Samuel Roberts' hand on the 18th of every month. $60, not much, but enough to buy groceries for a week, enough to keep the lights on in his small apartment on the south side of Chicago. David never knew. David never asked where the extra cash from my paycheck went, and I never told him. Samuel had driven David to work for nearly a decade before everything changed. One day, without warning, David came home and announced Samuel was gone. He made a mistake. David had said, his tone flat, final. I had to let him go. No severance, no explanation, just gone. I couldn't shake the image of Samuel's face that last time I saw him at our house, quiet, dignified, but with eyes that held a flicker of something I couldn't name. Betrayal, maybe, or fear. So I found him. I tracked him down through a friend who worked at the transit authority, and I started helping. $60 a month. It wasn't charity. It was penance, maybe, for whatever David had done. But today, November 18th, 2024, everything would change. The morning started ordinary enough. Soft light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Warm Nest Living, the home goods store, where I worked as assistant store manager. The scent of cinnamon candles and fresh linen filled the air, a comforting backdrop to the low hum of customers browsing through reclaimed wood furniture and hand-woven throws. I was helping Mrs. Thompson select throw pillows for her newly renovated den. She was a regular, a sweet woman in her 70s, with silver hair and an endless budget for home decor. What do you think, Melissa, Mrs. Thompson held up 2 velvet cushions, one sage green, the other a muted terracotta. Which one says cozy without saying trying too hard? I smiled, grateful for the distraction. The terracotta. It's warm but understated. Pair it with that cream throw over there and you've got a space that feels lived in, not staged. "Oh, you always know," she said, beaming. "I don't know what I'd do without you, dear." I wrapped her selections carefully, my hands moving on autopilot. But my mind wasn't on pillows or throws. It was on the date, the 18th. The day I always made my quiet trip to Millennium Park. The clock on the wall read 11:47 a.m. My lunch break was in 13 minutes. My phone buzzed in my apron pocket. A text from David. "David, busy day. Don't wait up for dinner. Meetings running late." I frowned. David had been saying that a lot lately. Meetings running late. Stuck at the office. Don't wait up. I typed back quickly. Me, no problem. Love you. He didn't respond. I handed Mrs. Thompson her shopping bag, my smile tight. "You're all set. Enjoy your new space." "Thank you, sweetheart. Say hello to that handsome husband of yours." "I will," I said, though the words felt hollow. The November wind off Lake Michigan was sharp, cutting through my coat as I walked the 3 blocks from the store to Millennium Park. The park was quiet this time of year. Tourists long gone, locals bundled up and moving quickly. The famous Cloud Gate sculpture, affectionately called the Bean, gleamed dully under the overcast sky. Samuel was already there, sitting on our usual bench near the southeast corner, away from the main pathways. He wore the same navy jacket he always did, frayed at the cuffs, and a knit cap pulled low over his graying hair. He stood when he saw me, his face creased with lines that seemed deeper than I remembered. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said quietly, his voice gravelly. "Samuel." I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope, 3 $20 bills folded neatly inside. "Here, for this month." He took it, but his hands were shaking. "Are you okay?" I asked, concerned. He didn't answer right away. His eyes darted around the park, scanning the sparse crowd. When he finally looked at me, there was something in his gaze that made my stomach tighten. "Mrs. Mitchell." "Melissa." He corrected himself, his voice low and urgent. "I need to tell you something. I should have told you a long time ago, but He paused, struggling. I was scared. Scared of what? Of what would happen if I spoke up? Of what he'd do? My pulse quickened. "Samuel, what are you talking about?" He glanced over his shoulder again, as if expecting someone to appear. "I wasn't let go because I made a mistake. Your husband, Mr. Mitchell, he fired me because I saw something I wasn't supposed to see." The world seemed to narrow. "What did you see?" "I can't say. Not here, not now. But I need you to be careful, Melissa. Real careful." Samuel, you're scaring me." "Good," he said, his voice breaking. "You should be scared. That man you're married to, he's not who you think he is." Before I could respond, he pressed the envelope back into my hand. "Keep it. I don't need it anymore. What I need is for you to protect yourself and your daughter." My breath caught. "Emily, what does she have to do with this?" But Samuel was already backing away, his face pale. "I have to go. Just be smart, Melissa. Don't trust anything he says." And then he was gone, disappearing into the gray Chicago afternoon. I stood there frozen, the envelope crumpled in my fist, the wind biting at my cheeks. That evening I couldn't shake Samuel's words. They echoed in my mind as I drove home, as I walked through the front door of our 2-story brick house in Lincoln Park, as I set my purse down on the kitchen counter. David was already home, which was unusual. "Hey," he called from the living room, his voice bright, too bright. I walked in to find him standing by the window, adjusting his cufflinks. He was wearing a crisp white shirt, dark slacks, and I stopped. "Is that new cologne?" He turned, flashing me that easy smile that used to make my heart flutter. "Yeah. You like it? Picked it up at lunch." I didn't like it. It was sharp, musky, nothing like the subtle, woody scent he'd worn for years. "It's different," I said carefully. His phone buzzed on the coffee table screen down. "Aren't you going to check that?" I asked. "It can wait," he said, moving toward me. He kissed my forehead, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder. "How was your day?" "Fine, busy." I hesitated. "You're home early." "Wrapped up sooner than I thought." He stepped back, studying me. "Hey, I've been thinking. Why don't I drive you to work tomorrow? We can grab coffee on the way. Spend some time together." I blinked. David hadn't driven me to work in years. "That's sweet, but you don't have to." "I want to," he insisted, his smile widening. "We've both been so busy lately. I miss you." Something in his tone felt rehearsed, scripted. "Okay," I said slowly. "Sure. Great." He kissed me again, this time on the lips, quick and light. "I'll make us dinner. You relax." I watched him walk into the kitchen, humming softly, and a cold knot formed in my chest. At 9:30 p.m., I told David I needed to run to the store for milk. He barely looked up from his laptop. The Jewel Osco on Clark Street was nearly empty, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. I grabbed a carton of milk and was heading toward the checkout when I saw him. Samuel. He was standing by the automatic doors, half hidden behind a display of seasonal wreaths. His eyes locked onto mine, and he gestured urgently. I abandoned my cart and hurried over. "Samuel, what are you doing here?" "I had to see you again," he said, his voice tight with panic. "I couldn't leave it the way I did. You need to know tomorrow morning, don't get in the car with your husband. What? Don't get in that car, Melissa. I'm begging you, take the bus. The one that goes to Springfield. Springfield? Why would I? Just do it. It's a matter of life and everything. You'll understand when you see who's on that bus. My hands were trembling. Samuel, you have to tell me what's going on. I can't. Not yet. But promise me you'll take that bus. I stared at him, this man who had once driven my husband every day, who now looked like he'd aged a decade in the span of a year. I promise, I whispered. He nodded, relief flooding his face. Good, and Melissa, be ready. What you're about to learn, it's going to hurt. But you're stronger than you think. Before I could ask anything else, he slipped out into the night. I stood there under the flickering lights of the parking lot entrance, the hum of the refrigerators behind me, the cold seeping into my bones. And for the first time in my 15-year marriage, I felt the ground beneath my feet begin to crack. I barely slept that night. Samuel's warning looped in my mind like a scratched record. Don't get in that car, take the bus to Springfield. You'll understand when you see who's on that bus. By the time Wednesday morning light crept through the bedroom curtains, I'd already made my decision. I was going to lie to my husband. David's alarm went off at 6:30 a.m., the same as always. He rolled out of bed, stretched, and padded into the bathroom. I heard the shower turn on the hiss of water against tile, the familiar rhythm of his morning routine. I stared at the ceiling, rehearsing the words in my head. When he emerged 15 minutes later, towel around his waist, droplets still clinging to his shoulders, I sat up and forced my voice to sound casual. Hey, about that ride to work today. Yeah. He opened his closet, pulling out a charcoal suit. I don't think I can make it. Emily texted me last night. She's not feeling well. I might need to pick her up early from school. David paused, shirt halfway on. What's wrong with her? She said her stomach's been bothering her. Probably nothing serious, but you know how she gets. He frowned, buttoning his cuffs. You want me to stay home? I can move my meetings. No, I said quickly. You've got that presentation with the Planning Commission. I'll handle it. He studied me for a moment, and I held my breath. But then he nodded, leaning down to kiss my forehead. All right. Call me if you need anything. I will. He grabbed his briefcase, checked his phone screen still down, and headed downstairs. I listened to the sound of the garage door opening, the engine starting, the car pulling away, and then silence. I threw off the covers and moved fast. By 7:15 a.m., I was standing at the Greyhound station on West Harrison Street, my coat pulled tight against the November cold. The station smelled like burnt coffee and diesel fuel. A handful of travelers sat scattered across plastic chairs, faces buried in phones or staring blankly at departure boards. I bought a ticket to Springfield, one-way $28, and waited. The bus arrived at 7:45 a.m., a hulking gray machine with tinted windows and the faint stench of recycled air. I climbed aboard, my hands shaking as I scanned my ticket. The driver, a heavy-set man with a graying beard, barely glanced at me. Springfield, Oak Street, stop? Yes, I managed. I found a seat near the back by the window and pressed my forehead against the cool glass. As the bus pulled out of the station and merged onto I-55 South, I felt my heartbeat hammering in my ears. What was I doing? What was I expecting to find? And more terrifyingly, what if? Samuel was right. The bus wasn't crowded. Maybe 20 passengers total. I studied each one, trying to guess which person Samuel had wanted me to see. An elderly woman with a cane sat near the front, humming softly to herself. A young man in headphones slouched across the aisle, eyes closed. A couple in their 30s sat 2 rows ahead, whispering and holding hands. None of them seemed connected to David. None of them seemed dangerous. I exhaled slowly, trying to calm the panic rising in my chest. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe Samuel had been confused, paranoid. Maybe I was chasing ghosts. But then about 40 minutes into the ride, a woman and a boy boarded at a rest stop near Pontiac. The woman was young, late 20s, maybe 30 at most. She had long dark hair pulled into a loose ponytail, delicate features, and an easy smile. She wore a burgundy sweater and jeans, a leather tote slung over one shoulder. The boy beside her looked about 9 or 10. He had tousled brown hair, a navy blue jacket, and a backpack covered in superhero patches. They took seats 3 rows ahead of me on the opposite side of the aisle. I didn't think much of it at first, just another mother and son heading to Springfield. But then the boy turned his head, laughing at something the woman said, and I saw his face. My breath stopped. It was like looking at a photograph I'd seen 1,000 times. The shape of his jaw, the angle of his nose. But more than that, it was his eyes. Dark brown, flecked with amber, slightly downturned at the outer corners. David's eyes. No, it couldn't be. I leaned forward, gripping the seat in front of me, my pulse pounding. The boy laughed again, reaching up to twist a strand of his hair between his fingers, a nervous habit I'd seen David do 100 times when he was thinking. And then I saw it. Around the boy's neck, half hidden beneath his jacket collar, was a pendant on a thin silver chain. A compass. My compass. The one David had given me on our 5th anniversary. The one I'd lost 2 years ago, or thought I'd lost. I'd searched the house for weeks, convinced it had slipped behind the dresser or fallen into a drain. David had shrugged it off. "We'll get you a new one," he'd said. But I hadn't wanted a new one. That pendant had been special. It had been ours. And now it was hanging around the neck of a 9-year-old boy who looked exactly like my husband. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The bus felt like it was closing in around me, the air thick and suffocating. The woman leaned over, brushing the boy's hair out of his eyes. "Tyler, honey, do you want a snack?" Tyler. His name was Tyler. "I'm okay, Mom," he said, his voice clear and bright. "Mom." I pressed my hand to my mouth, swallowing a sob. The woman, his mother, pulled out a granola bar and handed it to him. He unwrapped it carefully, still fiddling with that pendant. The compass caught the light as it swung gently against his chest. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and demand answers. But I couldn't move, couldn't speak. All I could do was watch. Tyler pulled out a small notebook and a pencil from his backpack. He started drawing his tongue, poking out slightly in concentration, another habit I'd seen David do. The woman beside him pulled out her phone and smiled at whatever she was reading. Then she typed something quickly, her fingers flying across the screen. A moment later, she held the phone up to show Tyler. "Look, your dad says he'll be home early tonight. He's bringing pizza." Tyler grinned. "Can we get extra cheese?" "Of course." She kissed the top of his head, and I felt something inside me shatter. Your dad. David was this boy's father. David had another family. And judging by Tyler's age, 9 years old, this wasn't some recent mistake. This wasn't a fling, a momentary lapse in judgment. This had been going on for a decade. When the bus pulled into the Oak Street stop in Springfield, I barely registered it. The driver's voice crackled over the intercom. "Oak Street, Springfield, Oak Street." Why, but it sounded like it was coming from underwater. The woman and Tyler stood gathering their things. I forced myself to stand too, my legs unsteady. I followed them off the bus, keeping a safe distance. The air in Springfield was colder than Chicago, sharper. The street was quiet, small shops, a cafe, a pharmacy with a faded awning. The woman took Tyler's hand and they walked half a block down Oak Street before stopping in front of a charming 2-story house with a white picket fence and a garden out front. Mums bloomed in terracotta pots on the porch steps. It looked like something out of a magazine, a perfect little home. Tyler ran up the steps, fumbling with his key. The woman laughed, unlocking the door for him, and then, just as they were about to go inside, a car pulled into the driveway, a silver sedan, David's car. I stopped breathing. He climbed out, still wearing his suit from this morning, and Tyler's face lit up. "Dad." The boy dropped his backpack and ran straight into David's arms. David caught him, lifting him off the ground, spinning him once before setting him down and ruffling his hair. "Hey, buddy, how was school?" "Good, we dissected a frog in science." "That's awesome." The woman walked over, smiling. David wrapped an arm around her waist and kissed her, not a quick peck, but a real kiss. Tender. Familiar. "Missed you," he murmured. "Missed you too." They walked into the house together, the three of them, David's hand resting on Tyler's shoulder. The door closed behind them. and I stood there on the sidewalk, my knees buckling, my vision blurring. I sank down onto the curb, my hands pressed flat against the cold pavement, trying to anchor myself to anything real. This wasn't just an affair. This was a second life, a second family, a second home. For 10 years, David had been living two lives, and I had been too blind, too trusting, too stupid to see it. I sat there on that quiet street in Springfield, Illinois, as the November wind cut through my coat, and I let the truth wash over me like ice water. My marriage was a lie. Everything I thought I knew gone, and I had no idea what to do next. I don't remember the bus ride back to Chicago. I don't remember buying the return ticket or watching the flat Illinois farmland blur past the window. All I remember is sitting at my kitchen table at 2:47 p.m., staring at the grain in the wood, waiting. The house was silent. Emily was still at school. The clock on the wall ticked steadily each second, stretching into something unbearable. I didn't cry. I couldn't. My body had gone numb, my emotions locked behind a thick wall of shock. I just sat and waited because I needed to hear him say it. 3 hours passed. At 5:43 p.m., I heard the garage door open. David's footsteps echoed through the mudroom light and easy. He was humming. He walked into the kitchen carrying a white bakery box, a smile on his face. "Hey, babe, I picked up those lemon tarts you love from—" He stopped when he saw me. I was still sitting at the table, my coat still on my purse on the floor. "Melissa?" His smile faltered. "You okay?" I saw Tyler. The words came out flat, emotionless. David froze. The bakery box slipped from his hands and hit the floor, lemon tarts scattering across the tile. "What, Tyler?" I repeated, my eyes locked on his. "Your son. I saw him in Springfield, on Oak Street." The color drained from his face. David sank into the chair across from me, his hands covering his face. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red. "How long have you known?" he whispered. "Since this morning. I got on a bus. I followed them. I saw you." "Melissa, I'm so sorry." 10 years, David. Tears streamed down my face. "He's 9 years old. You've had a whole other family for 10 years. I never meant for it to happen." "Then how did it happen?" I stood up my chair, scraping against the floor. "How do you accidentally build a second life?" He rubbed his face, trembling. "Nicole was a music instructor. We met at a city planning meeting. We started talking, and then it just happened. You had a child with her, David. You have a house, a routine. You pick up pizza and tuck him in at night. That doesn't just happen." "I know." He was crying now. "I know, and I hate myself for it. But Melissa, you have to understand, I love you. I love Emily. I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did." I slammed my hand on the table. "Every single day for 10 years. I love you both," he said desperately. "I know that doesn't make sense, but it's true. I love you and I love her. Get out." He blinked. "What? Get out." My voice was ice. "I can't look at you right now." Before he could move, the front door opened. Heels clicked on the hardwood floor. Barbara Mitchell. David's mother walked into the kitchen as if she owned the place. She was tall, elegant silver hair in a perfect bob, wearing a cream blazer that cost more than my monthly salary. "David," she said smoothly, setting her Chanel purse on the counter, "I thought I might find you here." I stared at her. "Barbara, what are you doing here?" She glanced at me, her expression calm, almost pitying. "Cleaning up a mess as usual." "What?" Barbara sighed, pulling out a chair. "Melissa, darling, I know you're upset, but let's be adults about this, shall we?" "Adults?" I gaped at her. "Your son has been lying to me for 10 years. "I've known about Nicole for quite some time," Barbara said matter-of-factly. "And yes, I've helped David manage the situation." The room tilted. "You knew?" "Of course I knew. David needed support. Financial support, logistical support. Someone had to make sure things didn't fall apart." I turned to David, who couldn't meet my eyes. "David came to me years ago," Barbara continued. "When Nicole became pregnant, He was panicking. I advised him to be practical. Practical? Yes. Barbara's gaze was steady. You're a wonderful woman, Melissa, but let's be honest, you gave David a daughter. Nicole gave him a son. But the words hit me like a slap. Excuse me, a son, an heir, someone to carry on the Mitchell name. You couldn't provide that. Are you serious right now? I'm being realistic, she said coolly. Nicole is young, healthy, and capable. She's given David what he needed. I looked at David, waiting for him to defend me. He said nothing. So what? I said, my voice trembling. You want me to just accept this? Barbara smiled thinly. I'm proposing an arrangement. You remain David's wife publicly. You keep the house, the social standing, the financial security. David will support you and Emily. In return, he'll spend weekends in Springfield. Everyone wins. I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. You want me to be his mistress. Don't be dramatic. You'll be his wife in every way that matters. Nicole will simply fill a different role. Get out, I whispered. Melissa. Get out of my house, I screamed. Both of you. Barbara stood smoothing her blazer. Think about it, dear. You have a daughter to consider. Stability matters. She walked out, David trailing behind her like a kicked dog. The door closed. I was alone. I don't know how long I stood there before I grabbed my phone. I needed to talk to someone. Anyone. I scrolled to Amanda Lewis, my oldest friend from college. She picked up on the third ring. Melissa, hey. Amanda. My voice was raw. David's been cheating on me for 10 years. He has a son. Silence. Amanda. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. I just found out today. I don't know what to do. Another pause. Melissa. You didn't know. I frowned. What do you mean? I thought people have been talking for a while now. My blood went cold. Talking? What do you mean, talking? There have been whispers. Someone saw David with a woman in Springfield. I thought you knew and were keeping it private. You thought I knew. My voice rose. And you didn't tell me. I didn't want to get involved. It's not my place. You're supposed to be my friend. Melissa, I didn't want to ruin your marriage if my marriage is already ruined. I shouted, and apparently I'm the only one who didn't know. I hung up. I stood there in my kitchen phone, clutched in my hand, staring at the lemon tart scattered across the floor. Everyone had known. Barbara, Amanda, probably half of Chicago, everyone except me, and I had never felt more alone. Thursday morning, Emily woke up with a fever. It was real this time, 101.3 degrees. Her face was flushed, her voice hoarse. She curled up on the couch under a pile of blankets, sipping ginger ale and half watching old sitcom reruns. I called the school called Warm Nest Living to let them know I wouldn't be in. Then I sat beside my daughter, stroking her hair, grateful, selfishly, guiltily, for the excuse to stay home, because I had no idea how to face the world outside. David hadn't come home last night. He texted around 9 p.m., staying at Mom's. Give you space. I didn't reply. Emily drifted off to sleep around 10 a.m., her breathing soft and steady. I sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone, my mind a fog of exhaustion and rage. And then my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Unknown Melissa. This is Susan Anderson. I heard what happened. I can help. Meet me at Beatrix on Randolph at 2 p.m. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Susan Anderson. I hadn't heard that name in years. Beatrix was a bright, airy cafe in the Loop, all white marble and potted ferns. I arrived at 1:55 p.m., leaving Emily with our neighbor, Mrs. Chen. No Mrs. Henderson, who'd been kind enough to check in on her every hour. Susan was already there, sitting at a corner table with a cup of coffee and a leather portfolio in front of her. She looked almost the same as I remembered, sharp put together, her dark hair streaked with silver, now cut into a sleek bob. She wore a navy blazer and gold hoop earrings, her expression calm but alert. When she saw me, she stood and offered a small, sympathetic smile. Melissa. Susan. I sat down across from her, my hands shaking. I don't understand. How did you... Word travels fast in certain circles, she said gently, especially when it involves Barbara Mitchell. I swallowed hard. You know Barbara. I know of her. Susan leaned back, folding her hands. I used to practice family law here in Chicago, handled a lot of high-profile cases. Barbara's name came up more than once. She's a force. That's one way to put it. Susan's gaze softened. I also remember you, Melissa. You came to me about 15 years ago, right before you married David. You wanted to review a prenup his family was pushing. The memory surfaced slowly. I'd been 23, nervous, sitting in Susan's sleek downtown office. She'd walked me through every clause, reassured me it was fair. I remember, I whispered. After that, we lost touch. But when I heard whispers about what was happening, about David, about Nicole, about Barbara's involvement, I knew I had to reach out. Why? I asked, my voice breaking. Why would you help me? Susan's expression hardened. Because I've seen what Barbara Mitchell does to women she considers inconvenient. And I won't stand by and watch it happen again. I stared at her, a flicker of hope igniting in my chest. What do I do? Susan leaned forward. First, you don't act rashly. Barbara is counting on you to be emotional, to make mistakes. You need to be smarter than that. I don't know if I can... You can, her tone was firm, but you need evidence, documentation, proof of everything David's done, financial records, communications, witnesses. Without that, Barbara will bury you in court. Court? My stomach dropped. If you want a fair divorce settlement, custody of Emily, and any chance of holding David accountable, yes, court. And trust me, Barbara will fight dirty. I felt sick. I don't even know where to start. Susan opened her portfolio and slid a business card across the table. It was blank except for a phone number. Start by calling me. I'm retired, but I still do consulting. I'll help you build your case, quietly, carefully. I took the card, my hands trembling. Why are you doing this? Susan's eyes darkened. Let's just say Barbara and I have history, and I'd very much like to see her lose. Friday afternoon, I met Samuel at Millennium Park. It was colder than it had been earlier in the week, the sky a pale, washed-out gray. The bean reflected the emptiness around it, barely any tourists, just a few joggers and dog walkers. Samuel was waiting at our usual bench, a worn leather satchel on his lap. Mrs. Mitchell, he said quietly as I approached. Samuel. I sat down beside him, pulling my coat tight. Thank you for meeting me. He nodded, his face lined with worry. I've been thinking about you, about what you must be going through. It's been difficult. He reached into the satchel and pulled out a small, battered notebook bound in cracked brown leather. I need to give you this, he said, pressing it into my hands. I stared at it. What is it? A record. 5 years worth. Places I drove Mr. Mitchell, times, dates, locations, money I saw him move, conversations I overheard. My breath caught. You kept track. I didn't trust him. Samuel's voice was low, bitter, and I was right not to. I opened the notebook. The pages were filled with Samuel's careful handwriting. Addresses, timestamps, dollar amounts. November 12th, 2019, drove to Springfield, Oak Street, stayed 4 hours, saw woman and child. March 3rd, 2020, withdrew $4,500 from account ending in 7821. Said it was for home repairs. No repairs made. June 18th, 2021, overheard phone call. I can't keep doing this, Barbara. She's going to find out. My hands were shaking. Samuel, there's something else, he said, his voice thick. The reason he fired me. I looked up. A year ago, Emily had a piano recital. You'd been talking about it for weeks, but Mr. Mitchell scheduled a trip to Springfield that same weekend. Samuel's jaw tightened. I reminded him. I said, Sir, don't you want to see your daughter perform? My throat closed. He fired me the next day, said I was overstepping, but I knew the real reason. I'd reminded him that he had a life here, a family here, and he didn't want to face it. Tears blurred my vision. He chose Tyler over Emily. Samuel nodded. He's been choosing Tyler for years. I closed the notebook, pressing it against my chest. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you for this. Samuel stood, his hand resting briefly on my shoulder. Be careful, Mrs. Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell's not the one you need to worry about. It's his mother. I know. He walked away, disappearing into the gray afternoon, and I sat there alone, clutching the notebook like a lifeline. That night, after Emily had gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen table and read through Samuel's notebook from beginning to end. Every page was another punch to the gut. But it was the financial entries that made my blood run cold. March 3rd, 2020. Withdrew $4,500 from account ending in 7821. I pulled up our bank statements on my laptop. Account ending in 7821 was Emily's college fund, the one David and I had set up when she was born, the one we'd been contributing to for 15 years. I scrolled through the transactions. March 3rd, 2020, withdrawal. $4,500, July 14, 2021, withdrawal. $1,800, October 9, 2023, withdrawal. $6,200. My vision blurred. Emily's college fund, the money we'd saved for her future. The money I'd scrimped and saved for working extra shifts, skipping vacations. David had stolen it, not just from me, from her. I thought about Emily upstairs, asleep in her room, dreaming about college applications and art school and all the things she wanted to become. And David had taken that from her to fund his second life, to buy pizza for Tyler, to play house in Springfield. Something inside me snapped, not the fragile, desperate snap of heartbreak, something harder, colder. This wasn't about our marriage anymore. This wasn't about betrayal or broken vows or love turned sour. This was about my daughter, and David had just made the worst mistake of his life. Saturday morning, I woke up with a plan. Susan had called me the night before, her voice calm and methodical. Before you do anything, you need to gather everything. Documents, emails, financial records, every shred of evidence. How? You play the part. Pretend everything's fine. Make him believe you're willing to forgive. And while he's relaxed, you collect what you need. So that's what I was going to do. David came downstairs at 7:30 a.m., his steps hesitant, his face drawn. He'd spent 2 nights at Barbara's, but this morning I was ready. I was standing at the stove making scrambled eggs and toast. Coffee brewed in the pot. Sunlight streamed through the windows. I looked like a wife. David froze in the doorway. Morning, I said, my voice light. Melissa, you're cooking. Emily needs to eat. So do you. I plated the eggs and set them on the table. Sit. He sat slowly, watching me like I might explode. I poured him coffee and sat down across from him. Melissa, Let's not talk about it right now, I said quietly. I'm trying to process everything, but I don't want Emily to see us falling apart. So for now, let's just get through the day. Okay. Relief flooded his face. He reached across the table and took my hand. Thank you. God, thank you. I know I don't deserve this. I squeezed his hand gently, forcing a small smile. Inside, I felt nothing. At 10 a.m., David left for errands. I'll be back by noon, he said, kissing my forehead. Take your time. The moment his car pulled out, I moved. David's home office was unlocked, maybe because he thought I was softening. I sat at his desk and opened his laptop. No password. I started with his email, searching for Nicole. David to Nicole, October 2024. I told her I'm working late again. She doesn't suspect anything. Tyler's recital is next Friday. Write Nicole to David. When are you going to tell her David to Nicole? Soon, I promise. Soon. He'd been saying that for 10 years. I kept scrolling. Another thread, David and Barbara. Barbara to David, September 2024. Martin Crane has the paperwork ready. Once Melissa signs over the Lincoln Park property, we can liquidate and settle your obligations. Do not tell her about the full amount. My hands froze. Lincoln Park property. My house. The house my grandmother had left me. Barbara wanted me to sign it over. I searched for Martin Crane. David to Martin Crane. November 2024. Can we expedite the transfer? I need liquidity by January. Martin to David, you'll need Melissa's signature. Has she agreed? David to Martin, she will. I felt sick. I opened the desk drawer. Bills, receipts, insurance documents, a receipt from a jewelry store. $2,800 for a ruby pendant necklace, dated 3 weeks ago. The pendant I'd seen around Nicole's neck in Springfield. He'd stolen from Emily's college fund to buy jewelry for his mistress. I kept digging. At the bottom, a crumpled piece of paper, handwritten. Debts, Caesar's Palace, Las Vegas, $450,000 Atlantic City. Borgata, $380,000 private loan. Tony Greco, $370,000 total, $200,000. My breath left my body. $1.2 million. Another receipt, Pathways Recovery Center, gambling addiction support. He'd gone to counseling once, 2 years ago, never again. I pulled up our joint bank account. Emily's college fund started at $35,000 3 years ago. Now it showed $700. He'd taken $26,300. I took photos of everything with my phone, every email, every receipt, every document. Then I closed the laptop, put everything back exactly as I'd found it, and walked out. I locked myself in the bathroom and called Susan. I found it, I said, my voice shaking. All of it. The emails, the debts, the jewelry, the gambling. Slow down. Tell me everything. I told her about the $1.2 million, the emails with Martin Crane, the jewelry receipt, the college fund. Silence. Susan, he's going to try to take your house, she said quietly. What? The property in Lincoln Park. It's in your name, right, from your grandmother's estate. Yes. It's worth, what, $800,000? Around that. David needs that money to pay off his debts. Barbara's helping him get it. That's why she proposed the arrangement. It'd keep you compliant, keep you quiet, and get you to sign over the house. I felt like I was drowning. But it's my house. Not if you sign the transfer documents Martin Crane is drafting. Melissa, do not sign anything. Do you understand nothing? I won't. And keep playing the role. Keep him believing you're cooperating. Okay. I hung up and stared at myself in the mirror. I didn't look strong, but I wasn't going to let David see that. That evening, Emily came downstairs while I was making dinner. Mom, yes, sweetie. Are you and Dad okay? I froze. Why do you ask? You guys have been weird. Dad's been gone a lot, and you seem sad. I set the knife down and turned to face her. We're fine, honey. Just some grown-up stuff we're working through. Are you sure? I'm sure. She nodded and headed back upstairs. I stood there gripping the counter. I was doing this for her. All of it. David came home at 6 p.m. carrying grocery bags and a bouquet of daisies. For you, he said, handing me the flowers. They're lovely. Thank you. He set the groceries down and turned to me. Melissa, I know I've messed up, but I'm going to do everything I can to make this right. I swear. He pulled me into a hug. I stood there stiff in his arms thinking about the $1, $2 million in debts, the stolen college fund, the emails with Martin Crane, and I said, my voice steady, of course, David, we're family. He pulled back relief written all over his face. Thank you for giving me another chance. I smiled. He didn't hear the ice in my voice. He didn't see the calculation in my eyes. And that was exactly what I needed. For 3 days, Monday through Wednesday, I played the role of the forgiving wife. I smiled when David came home. I cooked dinner. I asked about his day. I pretended to believe that our marriage could be saved, but inside I was calculating, observing, gathering evidence. Susan had taught me, act like you've forgiven him. Make him feel safe. That's when people make mistakes. So I did. Monday morning, David woke up cautious, apologetic. He brought me coffee in bed, something he hadn't done in years. I know I don't deserve this, he said quietly, but I'm going to make it right. I promise. I smiled softly. I know you will. He kissed my forehead and left for work. The moment the door closed, I exhaled. For the next 3 days, David tried. He came home on time. He helped Emily with her algebra homework. He bought groceries. He fixed the leaking faucet in the bathroom. He was performing too. At dinner Monday night, he reached across the table and took my hand. "I love you, Melissa. I know I've made mistakes, but I want to fix this. For us. For Emily." Emily stared at her plate silent. I squeezed his hand. "I want that too." But my other hand, hidden beneath the table, was clenched into a fist. Tuesday, he stayed late at the office. He texted me at 7, stuck in a meeting. Be home by 9. I knew he was lying, but I didn't confront him. Not yet. Wednesday morning, he brought flowers. Roses, my favorite. "For you," he said, kissing my cheek. I put them in a vase and smiled. "Thank you, David. They're beautiful." He looked relieved, hopeful. He thought he was winning. Tuesday night, after David had gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with Samuel's leather notebook open in front of me. 5 years of entries, 5 years of lies. I knew what I had to do. Wednesday evening after dinner, I asked David to sit with me in the living room. "I want to talk," I said calmly. He looked nervous, but nodded. "Okay." I pulled the leather notebook from my bag and set it on the coffee table between us. His face went pale. "What? What is that?" Samuel kept a record of everything. Every time you went to Springfield, every time you withdrew money from Emily's college fund, every lie you told me. David's hands began to shake. "Melissa, I'm not finished." I opened the notebook to a page dated 3 years earlier. November 12th, 2018, withdrawal $4,500. College fund now $3,500. I turned the page. July 23rd, 2019, withdrawal $1,800. College fund now $28,700. I turned another page. October 9th, 2021, withdrawal $6,200. College fund now $22,500. I looked up at him. "Over 5 years, you stole $26,300 from our daughter's education fund, money my grandmother left for her, money that was supposed to be untouchable." David collapsed forward, his head in his hands. "I'm sorry. God, Melissa, I'm so sorry. I'll pay it back. I swear, I'll fix this." I pulled out a sheet of paper and a pen. "Then sign this." He looked up confused. "What is it?" "A promissory note. You will repay $26,300 to Emily Carson Mitchell's education fund by December 15th, 2022, with interest, and you will cease all contact with Nicole Parker, effective immediately." His eyes widened. "Melissa, I sign it, or I take everything to a lawyer tomorrow morning." He stared at the paper for a long moment. Then, with trembling hands, he signed. Wednesday afternoon, while David was at work, I met Susan at a small cafe in Evanston, 20 minutes north of Chicago. She was already seated when I arrived, a folder open in front of her. "Melissa, sit down." I sat, my heart pounding. "What did you find?" Susan slid a document across the table. "This is a property transfer request, filed 3 weeks ago by Martin Crane Barbara's attorney." I stared at the paper. "Request to transfer property at 2847 North Burling Street, Lincoln Park, Chicago, Illinois. From sole ownership, Melissa Carson Mitchell, to joint ownership, Melissa Carson Mitchell and David James Mitchell." My hands went cold. "He tried to steal my house." "No, not just your house," Susan said. "Your grandmother's house. The one she left to you in her will. The one that's been in your name and your name only since May of 2019. I felt sick. "Why?" Susan pulled out another document, a geological survey report. "Because of this." I scanned the report. Technical language, maps, diagrams. And then I saw it. Preliminary findings indicate significant natural gas reserves beneath properties along North Burling Street, Lincoln Park. Estimated value $2,000 to $3,000 per property. I looked up at Susan, stunned. $2 to $3 million. Yes, and David knew. He had access to city planning records. He saw the surveys. He knew your land was valuable. So he and Barbara hatched a plan, get you to sign a joint ownership transfer, then force you out. Once the land was in his name, he could sell it and pay off his gambling debts. I felt my hands trembling. He was going to take everything. Susan nodded, but he failed. The transfer request was denied because the property is solely in your name, inherited through your grandmother's estate. No spousal claim, no joint ownership. It's yours. Completely. I exhaled relief flooding through me. What do I do now? Susan closed the folder. We wait, we document everything, and when the time is right, we take him to court. Wednesday night, after David had signed the promissory note, I went to the kitchen to make tea. David was in the bedroom door, half closed. I heard his voice, low and tense. Mom, she knows. She found out about the money. I froze, standing just outside the door. Barbara's voice came through faintly on speakerphone. Did she sign the transfer? No, she wouldn't. She made me sign a promissory note instead. A long pause. You fool. We needed that house, David. That land is worth millions. I know, but does she know about the gas reserves? I don't think so. Good, keep it that way. We'll figure something else out. David's voice dropped to a whisper. What if she takes Emily and leaves? Barbara laughed cold sharp. She won't. She's too weak. She always has been. I stood frozen in the hallway, my heart pounding. They were still planning, still scheming. The promissory note meant nothing. They weren't going to stop. I walked back to the kitchen, hands shaking, and pulled out my phone. I texted Susan, "They're still planning something. I need to act fast." For 3 more days, I played my part. Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Each morning I woke up beside David, smiled over coffee, asked about his day. Each night I listened to him talk about work, about city council meetings, about trivial things that didn't matter. And each day he grew more comfortable, more relaxed. He thought he'd won. Sunday morning, the house was filled with sunlight. I stood at the stove, flipping pancakes, humming softly to an old song I couldn't quite name. Emily was still asleep upstairs. David was in the shower. Everything looked normal. Everything looked fine. And then I found it. I needed a pen to jot down a grocery list. Mine had run out of ink, and I remembered David kept extras in his briefcase. The briefcase sat on the bench in the hallway, partially unzipped. I opened it, reaching for the front pocket where he usually kept pens and notepads. But my hand brushed against something in the deeper interior pocket, a pocket I hadn't checked before. I pulled it out. A photograph. No, an ultrasound image. Black and white, grainy with measurements along the side. My hands went cold. Date May 22nd, 2024. And below it, in Nicole's handwriting, I recognized it from the cards I'd seen in Springfield Daddy's Boy. Daddy's Heir, waiting for you. I stared at the image, my vision blurring. May 22nd, 5 months ago. Which meant Nicole was 6 months pregnant now. David wasn't just maintaining his second family, he was expanding it. A second son. Another heir. Another piece of the life he'd built without me. I pressed my hand to my mouth, trying to breathe. The pancakes were burning. I could smell them, but I couldn't move. All I could do was stare at that tiny ghostly shape on the ultrasound and think he's replacing us. He's replacing Emily and me completely. I set the ultrasound down on the counter, my hands shaking, and then I heard it, a buzzing sound, faint, coming from the hallway. I followed the sound to David's coat, the one he'd worn yesterday, still hanging on the hook by the door. The buzzing was coming from the inside pocket. I reached in and pulled out a phone. Not David's phone, a second phone. A cheap burner with a cracked screen. The screen lit up. Incoming, call Mom Barbara. My finger hovered over the screen. I should let it go to voicemail. I should put it back. I answered, and I put it on speaker. David. Barbara's voice was sharp and patient. I didn't say anything. David, are you there? We need to finalize the timeline. Nicole's due date is January 18th. That gives us 6 weeks to get Melissa to sign the transfer documents before the baby arrives. Once the second boy is born, we'll have leverage. 2 sons, 2 heirs. The Mitchell name secured. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Have you gotten her to sign yet? Barbara continued. I know you said she's softening, but we can't afford delays. The property's worth $2.8 million with the gas rights. We liquidate, settle your debts, and set up trust funds for both boys. Melissa can have whatever's left if there's anything left. She laughed. Cold. Calculating. Just keep playing the devoted husband for a few more weeks. Tell her you want to set up a charity fund in her grandmother's name. Something sentimental. She'll sign anything if you frame it right. And once we have her signature, we move quickly. File for legal separation on grounds of irreconcilable differences. She'll be out of the house by spring. My hands were trembling so hard I almost dropped the phone. Call me back when you get this, Barbara said. And David, don't screw this up. You've come too far. The line went dead. I stood there in the hallway, the phone still in my hand, the ultrasound image crumpled on the counter behind me, and I finally understood. This wasn't about love. It wasn't about passion or mistakes or human weakness. This was a transaction. I was a resource to be extracted, a property to be liquidated, an obstacle to be removed, and they thought I'd just let it happen. I heard footsteps on the stairs. David appeared freshly showered, wearing jeans and a t-shirt, his hair still damp. Hey babe, those pancakes smell. He stopped. I was standing in the middle of the living room holding the ultrasound in one hand and the burner phone now shattered on the floor in the other. His face went white. Melissa, 6 months. I said, my voice eerily calm. She's 6 months pregnant, and you've been planning this the entire time. It's not what you think. I heard Barbara, I said. I heard everything. The gas rights, the $2.8 million, the charity fund lie. All of it. David's jaw tightened, and then something shifted in his expression. The mask fell away. So you know, he said flatly. Yes. Good. He crossed his arms, leaning against the doorway. I'm tired of pretending. I stared at him. Pretending? Yeah, pretending I'm happy. Pretending this marriage works. Pretending you're enough. The words hit like a slap. You've been enough for Emily. He continued, his tone cold. I'll give you that. But for me, Melissa, you've been dull, predictable. You stopped trying years ago. I stopped trying. My voice cracked. I worked full-time, raised our daughter, kept this house running while I built a life that actually makes me happy. He laughed bitterly. Nicole gets me. She's vibrant. She laughs. She doesn't spend her evenings folding laundry and complaining about leaky faucets. You stole from Emily? I said, my voice shaking. You stole $26,000 from our daughter's future to buy jewelry for your mistress. She's not my mistress. She's my partner. Then what am I? David looked at me, his eyes hard. A mistake. The air left the room. Get out, I whispered. This is my house too. Get out, I screamed. Get out, or I swear I will call the police right now and tell them everything. David's expression twisted. You think you're going to win this? You think you can fight me and my mother and walk away with anything? I don't care what I walk away with. I said, my voice steady now. I just want you gone. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he grabbed his coat from the hallway, pulled his wallet and keys from the table, and walked toward the door. Before he left, he turned back. This is war now, Melissa. And then he actually spit on the floor at my feet. The door slammed behind him. I stood there, frozen, staring at the door. Then my legs gave out. I sank to the floor, the ultrasound still clutched in my hand, now crumpled and torn. I didn't cry. I couldn't. There were no tears left, just a hollow, burning rage that filled every part of me. David had stolen my money, my home, my dignity, and now he wanted to erase me entirely. But I wasn't going to let that happen. I looked down at the ruined ultrasound in my hand, at the words Daddy's Heir scrawled across it, and I made a promise to myself. I was going to destroy him. Not with tears, not with pleas, with evidence, with strategy, with cold calculated precision. David wanted a war. He was going to get one. The garden was a mess. I'd been out here for 2 hours digging up flower beds with a hand trowel, pulling weeds, turning over soil that didn't need turning. My hands were blistered. My knees ached. Dirt streaked my jeans. But I couldn't stop. Every time I thought about David calling me a mistake, I dug harder. Every time I remembered Barbara's voice plotting to take my house, I ripped out another weed. Emily was inside doing homework. I'd told her Dad had to leave for work. She'd looked worried but hadn't asked questions. I was attacking a stubborn root when I heard footsteps. Harold Mitchell stood at the edge of the garden, his hands in the pockets of his worn wool coat. He looked older than I remembered, hair, thinner, shoulders stooped. But his eyes were clear. "Melissa," he said quietly. I stood up, brushing dirt off my hands. "Harold, what are you doing here?" "I didn't come as a messenger. I came as a man who's made too many mistakes and wants to do one thing right." Harold walked closer, looking around the overturned soil. "You're angry," he said. "Wouldn't you be?" "Yes, I would. I am." He took a deep breath. "I've been married to Barbara for 41 years. 41 years of doing what she says, becoming who she wanted me to be." There was bitterness in his voice I'd never heard before. "I wanted to be a painter. I had a studio, sold a few pieces, even had a gallery show once. But Barbara said it wasn't practical. So I went to work at her father's manufacturing plant, spent 30 years on a factory floor." He looked down at his scarred hands. "I gave up everything for her, and she's never once thanked me. Never once asked what I wanted. I'm just a tool, like you." The words hit me hard. "I'm sorry, Melissa," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you. I'm sorry I didn't tell you what was happening sooner, but I'm done being a coward." Harold reached into his coat and pulled out a small black USB drive. "What is that?" "Everything. I've been recording them, Barbara, David, Martin, Crane, for 3 months. Every conversation, every plan, every cruel thing they said about you." My breath caught. "You recorded them?" "Yes. Barbara laughed when she talked about you signing over the house. She said you were too sentimental. David said you'd never been smart enough to question him. They planned everything the charity fund lie, the exact wording Martin would use. It's all on here." Rage burned through me. I took the USB, my hands shaking. "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because I'm tired of being her pawn, and because you deserve to fight back." He paused. "There's something else. Nicole's performing tonight. Right now. At the Chicago Academy of Music. David bought her that ruby necklace, the $2 $800 one, and she's wearing it on stage. Half the city's there. Barbara made sure of it. She wanted Nicole to be seen, to be legitimized." My heart pounded. Barbara told me this morning. She was gloating. She said once Nicole's performance is over, the Mitchell family will be properly positioned with 2 sons and Nicole as the future. I looked down at the USB. "You could go to the police," Harold said. "Build a case. Let the courts handle it. But that'll take months, maybe years. And Barbara will fight you every step. Then what do? You expose them publicly tonight. You want me to go to the academy? Yes, walk in with this USB, play the recordings for everyone to hear." "Harold, it's what Barbara fears most," he interrupted. "She doesn't care about the law, she has lawyers. She doesn't care about money. But public humiliation, being exposed in front of her peers, that's her worst nightmare." I thought about Barbara's perfectly styled hair, her Chanel purses, her carefully curated image. He was right. If you do this, you won't just hurt David. You'll destroy Barbara's reputation, and that's the only thing she truly values. I looked back at Harold. "Why now, after all these years?" His eyes were sad. "Because I'm 70 years old, Melissa, and I don't want to reach the end knowing I stood by and let a good woman be destroyed by my family. You deserve better. Emily deserves better." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Thank you," I whispered. Harold nodded. "Go. Do what needs to be done. And Melissa, don't hold back." As soon as Harold left, I ran inside and grabbed my phone. I called Susan. "Melissa, I'm doing it. I'm going to the academy. Tonight. Right now. I'm going to play the recordings in front of everyone. A pause. Do you have the evidence? Yes. Harold gave me a USB, recordings of Barbara and David planning everything. Melissa, are you sure once you do this, there's no going back? I know. Susan's voice turned firm. I'll meet you there. Thank you. I hung up. I grabbed my coat, my purse, the USB, and the Bluetooth speaker I used for backyard parties. Emily looked up from her homework. Mom, where are you going? I stopped and kissed the top of her head. I'm going to fix something, sweetheart. I'll be back soon. Is everything okay? I forced a smile. It will be. I drove through Chicago as the sun set city lights flickering to life around me. The USB sat in my coat pocket. The Bluetooth speaker rested on the passenger seat. And in my chest, a fury burned that had been building for 15 years. 15 years of lies. 15 years of being undermined, dismissed, stolen from, but not anymore. The Chicago Academy of Music wasn't far, just 20 minutes across town. And Justice was even closer. The Academy was breathtaking. High vaulted ceilings, crystal chandeliers casting warm golden light across polished marble floors. The air smelled of expensive perfume, fresh roses, and old money. Women in silk gowns and men in tailored suits milled about the grand lobby, champagne glasses in hand, voices low and cultured. Parents adjusted bow ties on nervous children. Young musicians clutched instrument cases, their faces a mix of excitement and terror. I stepped through the double doors carrying a Bluetooth speaker in one hand and a purse containing a USB drive in the other. I didn't belong here. My jeans were still streaked with dirt from the garden. My coat was wrinkled. My hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. But I didn't care. I walked through the crowd like a ship cutting through ice, steady, deliberate, unstoppable. The lobby was massive. A grand staircase curved up to the second-floor balcony, where more guests leaned against wrought iron railings, looking down at the crowd below. Ushers in black uniforms directed people toward the performance hall, their voices polite but firm. I stood near the entrance, scanning the room. A mother knelt in front of her son, fixing his crooked bow tie. You're going to be wonderful, sweetheart. Two girls in matching navy dresses whispered nervously to each other, clutching sheet music. An older gentleman in a tuxedo laughed with a woman dripping in pearls. The Porters always put on a spectacular recital. This year's program looks outstanding. I felt like an intruder, a stain on their perfectly curated evening, but I kept walking, because somewhere in this crowd was the man who'd stolen 15 years of my life, and I was about to make sure everyone knew it. I saw them near the base of the staircase. David stood tall in a navy blue suit, his hair neatly combed, his smile easy and charming. He looked like every other wealthy father here, proud, accomplished, untouchable. Beside him stood Nicole. She was younger than I'd expected, late 20s, maybe 30. Her dark hair fell in soft waves over her shoulders. She wore a form-fitting burgundy dress that clung to every curve, including the unmistakable swell of her belly. 7 months pregnant. She wasn't hiding it. She was displaying it. In her hands, she held a small velvet box, the kind that held jewelry. The ruby necklace, I realized. The $2,800 necklace David had bought with money stolen from Emily's college fund. David said something to her, and she laughed, tilting her head back, radiant. He touched her arm gently, protectively, and I felt my stomach turn. This wasn't a secret. This wasn't something he was ashamed of. This was his real life, his real family. And I had been the inconvenience he was trying to erase. I looked past them toward the far side of the lobby. Barbara Mitchell stood near the coat check, her back ramrod straight, her silver hair styled into a perfect chignon. She wore a cream-colored blazer and a string of pearls, her expression calm and regal. She looked like a queen surveying her kingdom. And in a way she was. She'd orchestrated all of this. The lies, the manipulation, the plan to take everything I had. But her reign was about to end. Melissa. I turned. Susan stood beside me, wearing a sharp gray blazer and black slacks. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were alert. You made it, I said. Of course. She glanced around the lobby, taking in the crowd. "Are you ready?" I pulled the USB drive from my purse and handed it to her. "Ready." Susan pulled the Bluetooth speaker from my other hand, set it on a nearby bench, and plugged in the USB. The device blinked to life, a small blue light indicating it was connected. "This is it," Susan said quietly. "Once you press play, there's no going back. You understand that, right?" I looked across the lobby at David, at Nicole, at Barbara. "My old life already ended," I said, my voice steady. "This is just making it official." Susan nodded. "Then let's do this." She handed me the speaker remote, a small black device with a single button. I held it in my hand, feeling its weight. This was it. "Melissa." I turned again. Harold Mitchell stood behind me wearing a simple white dress shirt and black slacks. He looked different, his shoulders back, his chin raised. There was a quiet strength in his posture I'd never seen before. "Harold," I said, surprised, "I told you I'd be here." He glanced across the lobby at Barbara, his expression hard. "When she tries to stop you, and she will, I'll make sure she doesn't." "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." His voice was firm. "I've spent 40 years letting her control everything. Not tonight." He stepped beside me, standing shoulder to shoulder, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel alone. Susan stood on my other side, her arms crossed, her gaze steady. And I realized I had allies, people who believed me, people who were willing to stand with me. I wasn't fighting this battle alone anymore. A voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, the first half of tonight's performance will conclude in approximately 10 minutes. Intermission will follow. Thank you for your patience." The crowd began to shift, people moving toward the performance hall doors, finishing their champagne, checking their phones. In 10 minutes, they'd all be out here. In 10 minutes, this lobby would be packed with Chicago's elite parents, donors, board members, musicians. In 10 minutes, everyone would hear the truth. I looked down at the remote in my hand. My fingers trembled, not from fear, from anticipation, from the knowledge that justice, real, undeniable justice, was less than 2 minutes away. Somewhere inside the performance hall, a violin began to play, soft, haunting, and I waited. The doors opened. 300 people poured into the lobby like a tide, parents, musicians, donors, board members. The noise level rose instantly. Laughter, conversation, the clink of champagne glasses being refilled. I stood near the center of the lobby, the Bluetooth speaker resting on a marble-top table beside me. My finger hovered over the play button on the remote. This was it. I walked toward them. David saw me first. His eyes widened, then narrowed. He leaned toward Nicole, murmuring something I couldn't hear. Nicole turned, her expression confused. Barbara followed her gaze and her face went cold. I stopped 3 feet away from them. "Good evening," I said, my voice calm. David stepped forward, his jaw tight. "Melissa, what are you doing here?" "I came to listen to the music," I said. "Beautiful venue, isn't it? You need to go home," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Now." "Actually, I think I'll stay." Barbara moved closer, her expression sharp. "Melissa, whatever you think you're doing." I pressed the button. The speaker crackled to life. And then Barbara's voice, crisp, clear, unmistakable, filled the entire lobby. Barbara recording, "Once Nicole gives birth to the second boy, we move quickly. Get Melissa to sign the property transfer under the guise of a charity fund. She's sentimental about her grandmother, she'll fall for it. Once we have her signature, we liquidate the property, settle David's debts, and she's out. Simple." The lobby began to quiet. People turned confused, looking for the source of the voice. David recording, "And if she doesn't sign," Barbara recording, "She will, she's too trusting. You just cry a little, say you want to make things right, and she'll believe you. She always does." A few more people stopped talking. Heads turned toward the speaker on the table. Toward me. Toward David, Nicole, and Barbara. David recording, laughing, "You're right. She's incredibly naive. I told her I was working late last Thursday and she just believed me. Didn't even question it." Barbara recording, "That's because she's weak, David. Weak women are easy to manage." The lobby was silent now. Every single person was staring. David recording, "What about the college fund? She's going to notice the withdrawals eventually." Barbara recording, "By the time Emily goes to college, we'll be long gone with the money from the land sale. Let Melissa figure it out then. It's not our problem." A woman near me gasped. Someone whispered, "Is that Barbara Mitchell?" Nicole's face had gone white. She turned to David, her eyes wide with shock. Martin Crane's voice recording, "And you're certain the gas rights are worth pursuing." Barbara recording, "Absolutely. The geological survey puts the value between 2 and 3 million. David accessed the reports through his position at city planning. Melissa has no idea what that land is worth." Murmurs rippled through the crowd now, louder, angrier. He used his city position to access private surveys. That's corruption. He stole from his own daughter. David's face was red. He lunged toward the speaker, but Harold stepped in front of him, blocking his path. "Don't," Harold said quietly. The recording continued. David recording, "What about Nicole? Does she know about the debt?" Barbara recording, "Of course not. Nicole thinks you're a devoted father and a successful city official. She has no idea you're 1.2 million in the hole from gambling. Keep it that way." Nicole made a strangled sound. She turned to David, her voice shaking. "Gambling? You told me you had investments. You said, 'Nicole, I can explain. You used money from your daughter's college fund to pay for our baby.'" Her voice was rising now, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You stole from Emily to pay for me." "It's not like that." "Then what is it like, David?" She was shaking her hands pressed protectively over her belly. "Tell me." David reached for her, but she jerked away. Nicole's face twisted with rage and hurt. She looked down at the ruby necklace around her neck, the one David had given her just hours ago. The one she'd been so proud of, and her expression crumbled. "This," she whispered, touching the pendant. "This came from her daughter's money, didn't it?" David opened his mouth, but no words came out. Nicole yanked the necklace off, the delicate chain snapping. She threw it at David's chest. It bounced off and clattered to the marble floor. "Don't ever come near me again," she said, her voice breaking. "Don't come near me. Don't come near our son. We're done." "Nicole, please." "I said we're done." She turned and ran toward the exit, her burgundy dress swishing behind her, one hand on her belly, the other wiping tears from her face. The crowd parted to let her through, and then she was gone. Barbara moved toward the speaker, her face a mask of fury. "Turn that off," she hissed. "Turn it off right now." But Susan stepped in front of her, arms crossed, blocking her path. "I don't think so," Susan said calmly. Barbara's eyes blazed. "You have no right." "Actually, I have every right. This is a public space, and Melissa has every right to share what's been done to her." "Odd," Barbara turned to the crowd, her voice rising desperate now. "This is a private family matter. This woman is unstable. She's trying to ruin my son's reputation out of spite. Stop." Harold's voice cut through the noise. He stepped forward, positioning himself between Barbara and Melissa. "Stop lying, Barbara." Barbara's mouth snapped shut. She stared at her husband, disbelief written across her face. "Harold." "I gave her that recording." Harold said, his voice steady and loud enough for everyone to hear. "I've been recording you for months. Every meeting, every conversation, every cruel, calculated plan you and David made to steal from Melissa and destroy her life." The crowd murmured louder now. Barbara's face went pale. "You wouldn't." "I already have." Harold's gaze was unwavering. "And I'm filing for a separation. Tonight. I'm done, Barbara. After 41 years of letting you control me, I'm done." Barbara's legs seemed to give out. She stumbled backward, catching herself on a nearby chair. For the first time in her life, Barbara Mitchell had no words, no plan, no control. She sank into the chair, her face crumbling, her carefully constructed world collapsing around her. The lobby was silent except for the quiet hum of the speaker now finished playing. David stood alone in the center of the room, the ruby necklace at his feet, the velvet box still clutched uselessly in his hand. Hundreds of eyes stared at him, judging, condemning. He turned to me, his face twisted with anger and desperation. "You've ruined everything," he said, his voice hoarse. I looked at him. This man I'd loved for 15 years. This man I'd built a life with, this man who'd stolen from our daughter and plotted to take everything I had. And I felt nothing. "No, David," I said quietly. "I didn't ruin anything." I picked up the speaker, tucked it under my arm, and met his gaze one last time. I just turned on the lights. And then I walked away. I stepped out of the Chicago Academy of Music into the cold December night, my head held high. Susan walked on my left, her gray blazer buttoned against the wind. Harold walked on my right, his hands in his coat pockets, his shoulders back. For the first time in 15 years, I didn't feel alone. We walked in silence toward the parking lot, our footsteps echoing on the pavement. The sounds of the academy faded behind us, muffled voices, confused murmurs, the aftermath of what I'd just done. Susan spoke first. "I'm proud of you, Melissa." I looked at her. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have," she said firmly. "But I'm glad you didn't have to." Harold stopped beside his car, a modest sedan parked under a street lamp. He turned to me, his expression gentle. "Where will you go now?" he asked. "Home," I said. "I need to tell Emily." He nodded slowly. "That's good. She deserves to hear it from you." "What about you?" I asked. "What will you do?" Harold looked up at the sky, exhaling a long breath that fogged in the cold air. "I'm going to leave Barbara," he said quietly. "Tonight. I'll pack a bag, find a hotel, and file for separation in the morning." He paused, then added, "And I'm going to start painting again." I smiled despite everything. "I'm glad. I wasted 40 years being who she wanted me to be." He said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm not wasting whatever time I have left." He reached out and squeezed my shoulder gently. "You gave me that, Melissa. You gave me the courage to walk away." "You gave yourself that courage," I said. "I just turned on the lights." He smiled a real smile, the first I'd ever seen from him. "Good luck," he said. "You too." He got into his car and I watched him drive away. Susan stood beside me, her arms crossed against the cold. "Ready?" she asked. "Yes." We walked to our cars. As I unlocked mine, Susan called out, "Melissa." I turned. "The paperwork's ready. I'll file the separation petition first thing tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. I nodded. "Thank you." "We're going to win this," Susan said. "I promise you." I believed her. I got home at 8:30 p.m. Emily was sitting on the couch, her chemistry textbook open on her lap, but she wasn't reading. She looked up the moment I walked in, her face tight with worry. "Mom, are you okay? You were gone for hours. I texted you like 10 times. "I'm okay, sweetheart." I set my purse down and sat beside her. "But we need to talk." Her eyes widened. "Is it Dad?" "Yes." I took a deep breath and told her everything. I told her about Nicole, about Tyler, about the second baby on the way. I told her about the 10 years of lies, the double life, the house in Springfield. I told her about the college fund, how David had taken $2,600 from the money we'd saved for her future. And I told her what I'd done tonight, how I'd played the recordings in front of 300 people, how I'd exposed him. Emily stared at me, tears streaming down her face. "He took my college money," she whispered. "Yes. For her? For that other family? Yes." She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tight as she cried. "I'm so sorry, baby," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Why?" Emily choked out. "Why would he do that to us?" "I don't know, but he did. And we're going to be okay. I promise you we're going to be okay." After a long moment, Emily pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Mom." "Yeah. I'm glad you did it." I blinked. "What?" "I'm glad you exposed him. I'm glad you didn't just take it." She looked at me, her expression fierce despite the tears. "You were strong, you fought back, and I'm proud of you." My throat tightened. "Thank you, sweetheart." She hugged me again, tighter this time. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. "Yes, we are." At 9 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered cautiously, "Hello." "Mrs. Mitchell, this is Martin Crane." I went still. "I have nothing to say to you," I said coldly. "Please, just listen." His voice was strained. "I was at the academy tonight. I heard everything, the recordings, the crowd's reaction. What happened to Barbara and David?" "Good. I'm calling because I want to help you." I laughed bitterly. "You want to help me? You're the one who drafted the documents to steal my house." "I know, and I'm ashamed of that." He paused. "Barbara paid me very well to do her dirty work, but I'm not doing it anymore. What I heard tonight, the way she talked about you, the way David laughed about stealing from Emily, it made me sick." I said nothing. "I have everything, Melissa. Copies of every document, every email, every plan Barbara and David made. The property transfer scheme, the bank records, showing the withdrawals from Emily's fund, David's gambling debts, the geological surveys he accessed illegally through city planning, all of it." My heart pounded. "Why would you do this?" "Because I have a daughter too," he said quietly. "She's 12. And if someone did to her what David did to Emily, I'd want someone to help." I was silent for a long moment. "If you betray me," I said finally, my voice hard, "I will make sure the entire world knows what you've done. Every shady deal, every corrupt document you've ever filed. Do you understand?" "I understand, and I won't betray you. I'll bring everything to Susan's office tomorrow morning." "Fine." I hung up. I didn't trust him. Not yet, but I'd take the help. My phone buzzed. 15 missed calls from David. I deleted them all without listening. A text from Barbara. "Barbara, you will regret this. I will make sure of it." I deleted it. Another text from Susan. "Susan's separation petition is drafted. Filing at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Get some rest." I sent back a single word, "Me thank you." At 10 p.m., I checked on Emily. She was asleep, curled up under her blankets, her face peaceful. I sat on the edge of her bed, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. The war wasn't over. David would fight back. Barbara would try to destroy me. There would be court dates, legal battles, custody hearings. But tonight I'd won the first battle, and I wasn't fighting alone anymore. I had Susan, who'd stood by me from the beginning. I had Harold, who'd given me the weapon I needed. I had Martin, who might give me the evidence to finish this. And I had Samuel, who'd kept records for 5 years, waiting for the day I'd be ready to use them. I had an army, and I was ready for whatever came next. Monday morning, December 10, 2022, I walked into Susan Anderson's law office with a folder full of evidence and a heart full of resolve. The time for pretending was over. Susan sat across from me at her desk, papers spread out in front of her. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" I nodded. "I'm ready." She slid a document across the table. The petition for legal separation listed me, Melissa Carson Mitchell, as petitioner and David James Mitchell as respondent. The filing date was December 2nd, 2022. The grounds included adultery with Nicole Parker for 10 years, resulting in 2 children. Financial misconduct involving $26,300 stolen from Emily's college fund between 2018 and 2021, and fraud conspiracy with Barbara Mitchell and Martin Crane to transfer my inherited property. I sought full custody of Emily, restitution of $28,147, including interest, a 500-foot restraining order, confirmation of sole property ownership, and child support. I read through the document carefully, my hands steady. "This is everything, everything," Susan confirmed. "Once you sign this, there's no going back." I picked up the pen. "Good. I don't want to go back." I signed my name at the bottom, Melissa Carson Mitchell. Not Melissa Mitchell, not Mrs. David Mitchell, just me. At 10 o'clock, Susan and I met Martin Crane at a coffee shop in the Loop. He arrived carrying a leather briefcase, his face pale and drawn. He sat down without a word and opened the case. Inside were files, dozens of them. "Everything's here," he said quietly. "Everything you need." Susan pulled out the first folder. The property transfer scheme showed email threads between David, Barbara, and Martin outlining steps to transfer my property into David's name. There were drafts of forged signatures and instructions on manipulating me into signing. One email from Barbara dated October 15, 2022 read, "She's too trusting. Tell her it's for estate planning. She'll sign without reading." The gambling debt records showed David owed Caesars Palace in Las Vegas $450,000, Borgata in Atlantic City $380,000, and had a private loan from Tony Greco for $370,000, total $1,200,000. An email from David to Martin dated September 2022 said, "The loan sharks are threatening me. I need that land sold now. I don't care what it takes." Bank statements revealed withdrawals from Emily's education fund on 3 dates: November 12, 2018, $4,500, July 23, 2019, $1,800, October 9, 2021, $6,200. Additional cash withdrawals totaled $89,000 over 5 years, funneled through David's accounts to Nicole Parker, or directly to casinos. The fund had started at $35,000 in 2017. By 2022, it was down to $8,700. Barbara's emails proved she orchestrated everything. One message to Martin dated November 1st, 2022 read, "Melissa is a fool. She'll sign anything if David cries enough. Get the transfer done before she wakes up." Susan looked at Martin. "Why are you doing this? Why are you helping us?" Martin's jaw tightened. "Because I was there, at the music academy. I heard everything. And I realized I've spent 20 years helping that woman destroy people. I'm done." He slid one more document across the table. "This is a signed affidavit. I'll testify to everything, in court, on record." Susan took the document. "Thank you, Martin." He nodded and stood to leave. "One more thing," he said quietly. "David doesn't know I'm here. Neither does Barbara. When they find out, it's going to get ugly." I met his eyes. "Let it." That afternoon, my phone rang. David. His 47th call since the petition was filed. I answered. "Melissa, please. We need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about. I need that land. You don't understand. These people are going to hurt me." "Then you shouldn't have gambled away $1 million. It's not that simple." "It is that simple, David. You stole from Emily. You lied to me for 10 years. You tried to steal my grandmother's house. And now you want me to save you." His voice cracked. "Please, I'm begging you." Martin gave me everything, David. Every email, every bank statement, every lie. I have it all. Silence. "You're bluffing." Ask your mother, ask Martin, see what they say." Another long silence. "You've ruined me." "No, David, you ruined yourself." I hung up and blocked his number. At 2 o'clock, I walked into Chase Bank on Michigan Avenue with Susan. "I need to freeze all joint accounts," I told the banker. He nodded and began typing. "And I need confirmation that the property at 2847 North Burling Street is solely in my name." The banker pulled up the records. "Yes, the property was transferred from your grandmother's estate in May 2019. Sole ownership. No co-signers. No liens." Relief washed over me. "Has anyone attempted to add a co-owner recently?" "Yes. A request was filed 3 weeks ago but denied due to lack of authorization." "Good. I want that property locked. No changes without my written notarized consent." "Done." I walked out Susan beside me. "You're safe now," Susan said. "Not yet, but I'm getting there." That evening, I opened an envelope delivered that afternoon, an eviction notice. It listed me as tenant at 2847 North Burling Street for non-payment of rent. David had tried to evict me from my own house. I called Susan immediately. "He's trying to evict me. He can't. The house is in your name." "I know, but he's trying anyway." Susan's voice hardened. "Forward it to me. I'll handle it." At the bottom of the notice was a handwritten message in Barbara's script. "You should have signed when you had the chance." I set the paper down, hands steady. They wanted war. But that evening, Susan called back. Melissa Midwest Energy Development Corporation has been surveying Lincoln Park for 18 months. They want to lease your land. Upfront deposit $2.8 million. Annual lease $800,000. 12% royalties. Over 10 years conservatively, north of $10 million. I stared at the eviction notice. David had wanted millions. He wasn't going to get a single cent. If you've made it this far, drop a comment below and let me know, are you ready to see what happens next? Because the story is about to take an even more dramatic turn. Just a heads up, the next chapter includes some fictionalized moments for storytelling impact. If you prefer to stop here, that's completely okay. But if you want to see how Melissa's fight unfolds over the next 6 months, stay with us. 6 months after the scandal, I stood in the Cook County Courthouse on a cold morning in May of 2023. The courtroom was quiet, formal, and filled with the weight of everything that had led to this moment. David sat alone at the respondent's table. No lawyer, no Barbara, no one. His suit was wrinkled, his hair uncombed. He looked smaller than I remembered. I sat beside Susan, my hands folded in my lap, calm and steady. Judge Patricia Moreno entered and we all stood. Please be seated. Judge Moreno reviewed the case file, her expression unreadable. This court has reviewed the evidence submitted by both parties in the matter of Mitchell vs. Mitchell. The findings are clear and deeply troubling. She looked directly at David. Mr. Mitchell, you engaged in a decade-long extramarital affair resulting in 2 children. You systematically withdrew funds from your daughter's education account without authorization totaling $26,300. You conspired with your mother and a licensed attorney to fraudulently transfer property that was not yours, and you accumulated $1.2 million in gambling debts, which you attempted to resolve by stealing from your wife and child. David stared at the floor. Do you have anything to say? He shook his head. Judge Moreno turned to me. Mrs. Mitchell, this court recognizes the harm you and your daughter have endured. The evidence is overwhelming, and the respondent has offered no credible defense. She picked up her gavel. The court rules as follows. First, the marriage between Melissa Carson Mitchell and David James Mitchell is dissolved effective immediately. Second, full custody of Emily Carson Mitchell, age 15, is awarded to the petitioner, Melissa Carson Mitchell. The respondent is granted supervised visitation not to exceed 4 hours per month, pending psychological evaluation. Third, the respondent is ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $26,300 plus accrued interest of $1,847, totaling $28,147. Payment is due within 90 days. Fourth, the respondent is ordered to pay child support in the amount of $450 per month for a period of 5 years. Fifth, the property located at 2847 North Burling Street. Lincoln Park, Chicago, is confirmed as the sole and separate property of Melissa Carson Mitchell, inherited through her grandmother's estate. The respondent has no claim to this property. Sixth, a restraining order is issued. The respondent is prohibited from contacting the petitioner or approaching within 500 feet of her residence or place of employment. Judge Moreno struck her gavel. Case closed. I walked out of the courtroom into the hallway, Susan beside me. David's footsteps echoed behind us. Melissa, wait. I stopped, but didn't turn around. Please, just talk to me. For 1 minute. I turned slowly. He looked broken, lost. What do you want, David? I'm sorry for everything. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need you to know I never meant to hurt you. I stared at him for a long moment. You didn't just hurt me, David. You tried to erase me. You stole from our daughter. You built a second family while I was at home waiting for you. And when I found out, you and your mother tried to take everything I had left. His eyes filled with tears. I know. I'm so sorry. Your apology means nothing to me. I turned to leave. Melissa. I stopped and looked back one last time. You had 15 years to be a good husband, a good father, a good man. You chose to be none of those things. That's not my fault. It's yours. I walked away, Susan beside me, and I didn't look back. 2 weeks later, Emily and I stood in the driveway of our Lincoln Park house, watching the moving truck pull away. Everything we owned was packed into boxes headed to Madison, Wisconsin, a new city, a new life. Emily looked up at the house one last time. "Are you sad, Mom?" I thought about it. "No, I'm not sad. This house has too many ghosts." "Where will we live?" I found a little 2-bedroom house on the east side of Madison. It's small, but it's ours. Emily smiled. "Will I have to change schools?" "Yes, but Madison has great schools, and you'll be close to the University of Wisconsin when you start college." Her eyes lit up. "You really think I'll get in?" "I know you will." We climbed into the car, and I started the engine. As we drove away from Lincoln Park, Emily looked out the window. "Mom, yeah. I'm proud of you." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Thank you, sweetheart." "Do you think Dad will be okay?" I thought carefully. "I don't know. But that's not my responsibility anymore." We drove in silence for a while, the Chicago skyline fading behind us. "What about Grandma Barbara?" Emily asked quietly. "What about her? Do you think she'll ever apologize?" I shook my head. "No, people like Barbara don't apologize. They just find new people to control." Emily nodded, processing. "I'm glad we're leaving." "Me too." That afternoon, as we unpacked boxes in the Madison house, there was a knock at the door. Harold Mitchell stood on the porch holding a small framed painting. "Harold," he hugged me tightly, "I wanted to give you this for your new home." I unwrapped the painting. It was a small oil painting of a lake at sunset, peaceful, quiet, full of light. "Harold, it's beautiful. It's the first painting I've done in 40 years. I wanted you to have it." Tears filled my eyes. "Thank you." "I'm moving to Sedona next month," he said. "There's an artist community there. I'm going to paint full-time." "I'm so happy for you." He smiled. "I filed for divorce last week. Barbara didn't even fight it. I think she knew it was over." "Good." He looked around the small house. "You did it, Melissa. You got out. You rebuilt." "So did you." We stood together in the doorway, two people who had finally found the courage to leave. That evening, my phone rang. "Melissa, it's Samuel." "Samuel, how are you?" "Good, really good. I wanted to tell you Martha and I are moving to Grand Rapids, Michigan, to be closer to our daughter." "That's wonderful." "I also wanted to say thank you for everything. You gave me my conscience back. You saved my life, Samuel." "We saved each other." I smiled. "Yes, we did." Later that night, after Emily had gone to bed, I sat on the front porch of our new house and opened an email on my phone. The subject line read, "Land Lease Agreement Final Offer." The sender was Midwest Energy Development Corporation. The message explained that after completing geological surveys of my property at 2847 North Burling Street in Lincoln Park, they were pleased to offer the following terms. The upfront deposit would be $2,800,000. The annual land lease would be $800,000. Royalty payments would be 12% of extracted natural gas resources. The estimated total value over 10 years would exceed $10 million. The email asked me to review the attached contract and let them know if I wanted to proceed. It was signed by James Holland, Vice President of Acquisitions. I stared at the numbers. David would receive $450 per month in child support for 5 years. His total would be $27,000. I would receive nearly $3 million up front plus ongoing royalties. Karma didn't just knock on your door, it kicked the door down. 14 months after the scandal and 8 months after the divorce, I stood in my own store on a quiet street in Madison, Wisconsin, watching snowflakes drift past the window. The sign above the door read, "Carson's Home Haven" in elegant gold lettering. It was opening day. The store was small but warm. Wooden shelves lined the walls filled with handmade throws, ceramic dishes, scented candles, and vintage home goods. The air smelled like lavender and vanilla. I wore a beige cable knit sweater and jeans, my hair cut short in a modern bob. It was a new look, a new life. Emily stood near the back, arranging pottery bowls. She was 16 now, taller than me, her dark hair in a ponytail. She looked up and smiled. "Mom, this looks amazing." "You think so?" "Yeah, it feels like you." At 9 o'clock, the door chimed. Our first customer, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes, stepped inside, stamping snow from her boots. "Good morning. Welcome to Carson's Home Haven." "Oh, this is lovely. I heard you were opening today." She browsed for 20 minutes, finally picking up a lavender throw blanket. "I'll take this. For my daughter, she just moved into her first apartment." I wrapped it carefully in tissue paper. "I hope she loves it." "Congratulations on your store. Madison is lucky to have you." After she left, Emily walked over and hugged me. "First sale, Mom." "First sale?" It wasn't millions, it wasn't justice or revenge, but it was mine. And it was enough. That evening, Emily and I sat in our small 2-bedroom house on Emerson East, unpacking bags from Salvatore's tomato pies on Livingston Street. The aroma of wood-fired pizza filled the kitchen, fresh basil-melted mozzarella tangy tomato sauce, and a hint of garlic from the breadsticks Emily had insisted on ordering. The house was modest, nothing like Lincoln Park, but it was cozy, safe, ours. I pulled out paper plates and set them on the small wooden table near the window. Outside, snow continued to fall, blanketing the street in white. Emily opened the first box, a margarita pizza with bubbling cheese and charred crust. She pulled off a slice and bit into it, eyes closing in satisfaction. "Oh my God, this is so good." I smiled, taking a slice of my own. The crust was crispy and airy, the sauce bright and fresh. It tasted like comfort, like celebration. "We should have done this months ago," I said. "I know, right? Why did we wait so long to try Salvatore's?" "Because we were busy surviving." Emily paused mid-bite, then nodded. "Yeah, I guess we were." We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the only sounds the crackle of the crust and the hum of the heater in the corner. Then Emily set down her slice, nervous but excited. "Mom, I have to tell you something." "What is it?" "I got my acceptance letter today from the University of Wisconsin." My heart stopped, and she grinned. I got in, full ride. Full academic scholarship for the architecture program. I stood up, pulling her into a tight hug. "Emily, oh my God, I'm so proud of you. I know it's close to home, but the program is really good. It's perfect. You're going to do amazing things, sweetheart." She hugged me back, then pulled away, her expression more serious. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Have you heard anything from him?" She didn't say his name. She hadn't called David Dad in over a year. I shook my head, reaching for another slice of pizza. "His lawyer sends the child support check every month. $450, usually late. But I don't ask questions, and I don't care. Do you ever think about him?" I considered, carefully chewing slowly. "No, not anymore. His life isn't my concern." Emily nodded, relieved. "Good. Because he doesn't deserve to be in your head." "No, he doesn't." Saturday afternoon, Harold Mitchell pulled up in a battered pickup with Arizona plates. I hadn't seen him in 6 months. When he stepped out, I barely recognized him. His hair was longer, beard neatly trimmed. He wore colorful flannel, paint-stained jeans, and a turquoise bracelet. He looked younger, lighter. Harold. I hugged him. "Melissa. The store looks wonderful." He carried 3 wrapped canvases inside, setting them on the counter. "I brought you something. Paintings. I was hoping you might display them here." Consignment. I unwrapped the first canvas, a stunning desert landscape, red rocks and golden light. "Harold, this is beautiful. I just had my first solo exhibition in Sedona, sold 12 pieces. At 70 years old, I finally had my first real art show. I'm so happy for you. And I'm seeing someone. Her name is Claire. She teaches pottery classes. She's kind. She makes me laugh." I smiled. "You deserve that, Harold." "So do you," he said, looking around, "and it looks like you found it." That evening, after Harold left, my phone rang. "Melissa, it's Susan." "Susan, how are you?" Good, busy. I'm calling because I thought you should know David filed for bankruptcy last month. I was silent, processing. Okay. He's working as a cashier at a grocery store in Naperville, living in a studio apartment, alone. Nicole cut off contact. Tyler doesn't speak to him. Barbara won't take his calls. I looked out the window at the snow falling over Madison. How do you feel? Susan asked carefully. I searched for satisfaction or pity or anger, but I felt nothing. His life isn't my concern anymore, Susan. It hasn't been for a long time. That's healthy. That's exactly where you should be. Yeah, it is. Later that night, after Emily had gone to her room to draw, I stood by the living room window watching snow fall over Madison's quiet streets. The city was peaceful, cold, clean. Emily was in her room sketching designs for buildings she'd create someday. The little store on the corner was mine, truly, completely mine. The land lease payments came every month, more than enough for Emily's college to support us comfortably to build a future. And for the first time in 15 years, I realized this was enough. Not just financially, not just practically, but emotionally, spiritually. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need David to suffer. I just needed peace. And I had it. The next morning, an email appeared in my inbox. Subject book proposal inquiry from Rachel Nguyen. Literary agent, Bright Horizons. Literary agency. Dear Miss Mitchell. I read about your story in the Chicago Tribune 6 months ago, and I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. Your courage, your resilience, and your journey from betrayal to self-discovery struck a chord with me, and I believe it could inspire thousands of women facing similar situations. Have you ever considered writing a book, a memoir about your experience? How you uncovered the truth, how you fought back, and how you rebuilt your life could be incredibly powerful. If you're interested, I'd love to discuss this further. I think your voice could make a real difference. Best regards, Rachel Nguyen. I stared at the email for a long moment. A book. My story. Not for revenge. Not to hurt David or Barbara, but to help others. To show women that they could fight back, that they could survive, that they could rebuild. I looked around my quiet living room at the snow falling outside, at Emily's sketch pad on the couch, at Harold's painting on the wall, and I thought, yes, I have a story to tell. I hit reply. Thanksgiving. 1 year ago, the word tasted bitter. It meant sitting across from Barbara Mitchell at a polished dining table enduring passive-aggressive comments disguised as concern. It meant pretending everything was fine while my marriage crumbled in silence. Today, in the small 2-bedroom house on Emerson East in Madison, Wisconsin, the word meant something entirely different. It meant gratitude, real gratitude, for survival, for second chances, for the people who had stayed when everything fell apart. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon-roasted turkey and fresh sage. A golden brown bird rested on the counter skin, glistening with butter and herbs. Sweet potatoes bubbled in a casserole dish, topped with a pecan brown sugar crust. On the stove, green beans simmered with garlic and toasted almonds. I wore a soft cream sweater and jeans, my short hair tucked behind my ears. Emily stood beside me at the counter, chopping carrots for the stuffing. She was 16 now, tall and steady, her dark hair pulled into a loose braid. Mom, how many people are coming again? 6, Harold and Claire, Susan, Samuel, and Martha. That's a lot of food. It's Thanksgiving. There's no such thing as too much food. Emily smiled. I'm glad we're doing this. Last year was... She trailed off. Last year, we had eaten Thanksgiving dinner in silence. David had been there pretending everything was fine. Barbara had sent a passive-aggressive text asking if we were grateful for family. I had spent the evening numb, not yet knowing the full extent of the betrayal. Last year is over, I said gently. This year is ours. The dining table was set with mismatched plates I'd collected from estate sales, white ceramic with delicate blue patterns, vintage floral china, and simple stoneware. Cloth napkins folded into triangles, a small vase of dried wheat and autumn leaves in the center. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And it was enough. At 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Harold Mitchell stood on the porch wrapped in a thick wool coat, his silver beard neatly trimmed. Beside him, Claire Larson smiled warmly, her gray hair flowing beneath a knit hat. She wore a long bohemian dress layered under a cardigan turquoise jewelry glinting at her wrists. "Happy Thanksgiving," Harold said, pulling me into a hug. Claire handed me a foil-covered pie. Apple pie made with Honeycrisp apples. "It smells incredible, thank you." 20 minutes later, Susan Anderson arrived carrying yellow tulips. She wore a gray blazer over jeans, her short auburn hair styled neatly. She hugged me tightly. "I brought flowers and wine." I laughed. "Perfect." At 2:30, a silver sedan pulled into the driveway. Samuel Roberts stepped out, his gray hair combed back his face, kind and weathered. His wife Martha emerged carrying a glass dish covered in foil. "We brought pecan pie," Samuel said with a grin. Martha kissed my cheek. "You look wonderful, honey, so much lighter than last year." Then I felt tears prick my eyes. I really am. The table was crowded and warm and full of laughter. The turkey was golden and juicy, the stuffing savory with sage and celery, the mashed potatoes creamy and buttery. The sweet potato casserole was topped with a crunchy pecan crust. Green beans glistened with garlic and toasted almonds. Cranberry sauce, homemade tart, and sweet sat in a small porcelain bowl. Emily had set the table with care white plates, folded napkins, mismatched silverware. Candles flickered in the center, casting soft light across everyone's faces. Harold leaned back in his chair, a glass of red wine in hand. "I have to tell you all, I had my first solo exhibition in Sedona last month. Sold out. 12 paintings in one night." Claire beamed. The local paper called him a remarkable, emerging voice in desert landscape art. Harold's cheeks flushed. "I'm 72. Hardly emerging." Susan raised her glass. "Better late than never." Samuel set down his fork. "Martha's been cleared by her doctor to travel. We're planning a road trip to Colorado in the spring." Martha's eyes were bright. "I never thought I'd get another chance." Susan wiped her mouth with a napkin. "I've decided to come out of retirement. I'm offering free legal consultations to women going through separations or dealing with financial manipulation." I looked at her, my throat tight. "Susan, that's incredible." Emily spoke up, her voice soft but proud. "I got accepted to 3 schools, but the University of Wisconsin offered me a full-ride scholarship for architecture. I accepted last week." Harold lifted his wine glass. "To Emily, to all of us. 1 year ago, Melissa's life was shattered. Today, she's rebuilt it, and she's built something better." I felt tears threatening to spill. I lifted my glass. "To all of us, to second chances, to the families we choose, not the ones we inherit." The glasses clinked together, the sound ringing through the small dining room. For the first time in 15 years, I felt whole. After dinner, Susan and I sat on the front porch wrapped in fleece blankets. The air was cold and crisp, the neighborhood quiet. Snow had begun to fall again, dusting the streets in white. Susan sipped her coffee. "You did it, Melissa. You rebuilt your life." I stared at the snow-covered lawn. I spent 15 years making myself smaller, quieter, safer. I forgot who I was. I paused. "Now I remember." Susan smiled. "And now you're going to help others remember too." I pulled out my phone and opened an email. Subject: publisher interest. Final offer from Rachel Nguyen. Literary agent: 3 publishers have submitted offers for your memoir. The highest offer is $125,000. Working title: The Woman Who Turned on the Lights. "Are you ready?" Susan read over my shoulder. "Are you—" I thought about the women still sitting in the dark, the ones who believed the lies, the ones who thought they had no power, no voice, no way out. I typed my response, "Yes, I'm ready." I hit send and set my phone down. Inside, laughter echoed from the dining room. Emily was telling a story. Harold was helping Claire clear plates. Samuel and Martha sat side by side holding hands. If my words could help even one woman find the courage to turn on the lights, then every moment of pain had been worth it. 2 years after the scandal, I stood backstage at a room of one's own bookstore on Atwood Avenue in Madison, Wisconsin, listening to the hum of 300 voices filling the main room. 300 people. For me. For my story. 200 folding chairs had been set up in neat rows. Every single one was filled. Another 100 people stood along the back wall and spilled out onto the sidewalk, peering through the windows. The book, The Woman Who Turned on the Lights, had been published 6 months ago in June of 2024. It had already gone through 3 printings. It had spent 8 weeks on regional bestseller lists. Reader reviews flooded in daily, many from women who said the book had given them the courage to leave, to fight back, to reclaim their lives. And tonight was the official Madison launch. I stood in the small back office, hands trembling as I held a glass of water. I wore a navy blue dress that Emily had helped me pick out, simple, elegant, professional. My hair was styled in soft waves. Emily appeared in the doorway, her eyes bright with pride. She was 17 now, about to graduate high school in the spring, already planning her first semester at the University of Wisconsin's architecture program. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm terrified." She smiled. "You've done this before. Chicago, Milwaukee. You were fine." "This is 300 people, Emily. Because your book is incredible. It's already in its 3rd printing. It's a bestseller. People really care about what you have to say." I took a shaky breath. Susan Anderson stepped into the room, elegant in a charcoal blazer. She squeezed my shoulder. "5 minutes, Melissa. You ready?" Emily hugged me. "You've got this, Mom. Just tell them the truth." I closed my eyes and centered myself. 2 years ago, I had been afraid to speak, afraid to take up space. Tonight I would stand in front of 300 people and tell them exactly what had happened. I opened my eyes. Okay, I'm ready. The bookstore was packed. Every seat filled. People stood shoulder to shoulder along the walls. The air buzzed with anticipation. I stepped onto the small raised platform at the front of the room, and the crowd erupted into applause. My heart pounded. I opened the book to the first chapter. I took a breath and began. I had been giving Samuel Roberts $60 a month for over a year. Every 3rd Saturday, I would meet him at Millennium Park in Chicago and slip him the cash in a folded envelope. On November 18th, 2022, Samuel found me outside the grocery store late at night. His face was pale, his hands shaking. He grabbed my arm and said, "Don't get in that car tomorrow. Take the bus. Go to Springfield. You'll see who's on that bus. It's a matter of survival." The room was completely silent. I continued reading about the bus ride, about seeing Tyler for the first time, about the compass necklace I had lost years ago hanging around his neck. When I finished, the room remained silent for a long moment. Then someone began to clap. Then another. Then the entire room stood applauding. I set the book down my throat, tight with emotion. "Thank you," I said quietly into the microphone. When the applause finally died down, I spoke from the heart. The ending of my story isn't about revenge. It's about finding myself again before I became the person they wanted me to be. Love shouldn't erase you, it should make you shine brighter. If someone's love makes you disappear, that's not love. That's control. A woman in the 3rd row nodded, tears streaming down her face. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to take up space. You deserve to turn on the lights. The applause began again, louder this time. After the reading, I opened the floor to questions. A woman in her 40s raised her hand, her voice shaking. "Do you ever regret leaving?" I didn't hesitate. "No, I regret staying as long as I did." The room was silent. I stayed because I believed I could fix it, because I thought love meant sacrifice, because I was afraid of what people would think, but staying cost me 15 years. Leaving gave me my life back. Another hand shot up, a younger woman, maybe 25. "How did you find the courage?" I smiled sadly. Courage isn't the absence of fear. I was terrified every single day. But I started small. I opened a bank account he didn't know about. I saved $20 here, $50 there. I made one phone call to a lawyer, then another. Courage isn't one big moment. It's 1,000 tiny steps. A 3rd woman stood, her voice barely above a whisper. Is it ever too late? I looked at her directly. I was 38 when I left. I thought my life was over, but it had just begun. It's never too late. Whether you're 25 or 65, you deserve a life where you're not afraid. The woman sat down, tears streaming down her face. Finally, a young woman asked, "Have you forgiven him?" I considered carefully. Yes, but not for him. For me. Forgiveness doesn't mean what he did was okay. It means I'm no longer carrying the weight of his choices. He took 15 years from me. I won't give him one more day. After the Q&A, a long line formed for book signings. One by one, women stepped forward holding copies of The Woman Who Turned on the Lights. A woman in her 50s leaned in close. "After reading your book, I filed for divorce." "Thank you." I squeezed her hand. "I'm proud of you." A younger woman whispered, "My mom told me I had to endure it. You taught me I don't." An older woman, maybe 70, smiled through tears. "I stayed for 40 years. I wish I'd had your book back then." "You have it now," I said gently. Finally, Emily stepped forward holding a copy of the book. I opened the cover and wrote, "To Emily, you are my reason. Never let anyone dim your light. Love always, Mom." Later that night, driving home through the quiet streets of Madison, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I read your book. You were right. I'm sorry." D. I stared at the message for a long moment. David. 2 years later, and he finally apologized. I thought about responding, about telling him it was too late, about telling him I had moved on, but instead I deleted the message. His apology didn't matter anymore. I had forgiven him not because he deserved it, but because I deserved peace, and I had it. 3 years after the bus ride to Springfield, I stood in Millennium Park on a cold December morning. The air was sharp and clean, biting at my cheeks. A thin layer of snow blanketed the ground, muffling the sounds of the city. The lake stretched out beyond the park, frozen at its edges, gray and still beneath a pale winter sky. I wasn't running anymore. I was just visiting. Chicago was no longer a prison. It was just a city, and I was free. I walked slowly through the park, my boots crunching softly in the fresh snow. I wore a navy cashmere coat, one I had bought myself, with money I had earned from my book. My hair was longer now, brushed back in a simple style. No makeup, no pretense, just me. The park was quiet this early in the morning. A few joggers passed by, their breath visible in the cold. The iconic Cloud Gate sculpture. The bean reflected the pale gray sky, dusted lightly with snow. I walked toward the row of benches along the east side of the park. The bench. The one where I used to meet Samuel Roberts every third Saturday. The one where I had handed him $60 in a folded envelope month after month because I felt responsible for his life after David had taken his job away. The one where everything had started to unravel. I stood in front of it now, hands in my pockets, staring at the worn wood and metal frame. 3 years ago, I had been terrified, lost, invisible. Today I was whole. Inside my coat pocket was an envelope. Not $60 this time. $5,000. A check made out to Samuel Roberts, drawn from the royalties of The Woman Who Turned on the Lights. The book that had changed my life. The book that was changing others' lives too. I sat down on the bench and waited. 10 minutes later, I saw him walking toward me. Samuel Roberts. He was 73 now, his hair completely white, his face more lined than I remembered. But his eyes were still kind, still steady. He sat down beside me without a word, hands folded in his lap. "Melissa." "Samuel." We sat in silence for a moment, watching the snow fall gently around us. "How have you been?" I asked. He smiled sadly. "Martha passed away 18 months ago, peacefully, in her sleep." My heart clenched. "Samuel, I'm so sorry." "She lived a good life. We had 52 years together. I'm grateful for that." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the envelope. "I wanted to give you this." He opened it carefully, his weathered hands trembling slightly. When he saw the check, his eyes widened. "Melissa, I can't—" "You saved my life, Samuel. You told me to get on that bus. You gave me the truth when no one else would. This isn't charity. It's gratitude. He stared at the check, his throat working. Use it for something that brings you joy. Travel. A new place. Whatever you want. He folded the envelope and tucked it into his coat pocket. Then he looked at me, tears in his eyes. You gave me back my conscience, Melissa. For 6 years, I drove that man around. I knew what he was doing. I saw the texts. I heard the phone calls. And I said nothing. He paused. When I told you to get on that bus, I wasn't just saving you. I was saving myself. I reached over and squeezed his hand. You don't owe me anything, Samuel. I owe you my soul. We sat quietly for another moment. Can I ask you something? I said. Of course. Do you ever hear anything about David? Samuel nodded slowly. He moved to Indianapolis. Works at a nonprofit now, helps people with compulsive behaviors. Do you hate him? Samuel asked gently. I thought carefully. No, hatred is too heavy. I put it down a long time ago. Samuel smiled. That's the difference between you and Barbara. Barbara. She passed away last summer of 2024, heart attack. I felt a strange sense of relief, not joy, just lightness. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? I smiled faintly. No, but I should be. Samuel left a few minutes later, walking slowly back toward Michigan Avenue. I sat alone on the bench watching the snow fall. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who apologized for breathing, the one who made herself smaller and quieter and less, hoping that would be enough, the one who believed that love meant disappearing. She was gone now, not erased, not forgotten, but transformed. I didn't miss her, but I was grateful to her, grateful that she had survived long enough for me to wake up. I thought about David, about Barbara, about Nicole and Tyler and Martin Crane and all the people who had tried to take pieces of me. I had spent so much time angry, so much time hurt, but anger and hurt were exhausting, and I was tired of carrying them, so I had let them go. Not because they deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace. And I had it now. I had Emily thriving in college. I had my store in Madison. I had my book reaching women all over the country. I had myself, and that was enough. I pulled out my phone and called Emily. She answered on the second ring. Mom, how's Chicago? Cold, beautiful, a little bittersweet. Are you okay? Better than okay, sweetheart. I'm on my way home. Home, Madison, the little house on Emerson East, the store, the life I had built from nothing. I love you, Mom. I love you too, Emily. I hung up and stood brushing snow from my coat. I walked out of Millennium Park, leaving footprints in the fresh snow behind me. If you're reading this and you're sitting in the dark, too afraid to flip the switch, know this. The light is already there. You just have to be brave enough to turn it on. When you do, you'll see it, a life of your own, a future you built, a woman you were always meant to become. It won't be easy, but it will be worth it. I promise. I stepped out of Millennium Park and onto Michigan Avenue. Behind me was the city where I had shattered. Ahead of me was the road back to the home I had built from the ashes. Winter sunlight broke through the clouds, pale and cold but brilliant. For the first time in 15 years, I wasn't afraid of the light. I was the light. Looking back, I see a woman who spent 15 years making herself invisible. Don't be like me. Don't wait until family betrayal shatters everything you thought was real. Don't ignore the signs when family revenge becomes someone else's twisted game and you're the target. Here's what I learned. Family betrayal doesn't always come with warning signs. It comes disguised as love, as tradition, as duty. When someone uses family revenge to justify cruelty, when family betrayal becomes a pattern instead of a mistake, that's when you must act. God gave me 3 chances to wake up Samuel's warning, the bus ride, and Harold's courage. I almost missed all 3. God doesn't want you to endure abuse in silence. God wants you to be free. And God will send you allies if you're brave enough to see them. My advice, start small. Open a separate bank account. Document everything. tell one person you trust. And when the moment comes when family revenge is plotted behind your back and family betrayal is exposed, don't hesitate. Turn on the lights. You deserve a life where you're not afraid. You deserve peace. You deserve to be seen. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us reach women who need to hear this message. Drop a comment below. Let me know what's the biggest lesson you're taking away. This content includes dramatized storytelling elements for educational purposes. Some details are fictionalized, but the core lessons about recognizing financial and emotional abuse are real. If this style isn't for you, that's okay. Please seek content that better suits your needs.